In the competitive echelons of Harvard Business School, Francesca Gino emerged as a luminary. An award-winning behavioral scientist, she carved a niche for herself with groundbreaking research that challenged conventional wisdom on human behavior. Admired by students and esteemed by peers, Gino's insights into the paradoxes of rule-breaking and creativity earned her a reputation as a maverick mind, reshaping our understanding of the modern workplace. But beneath this tale of academic triumph, a scandal simmered, one that would send shockwaves through the ivory towers of Harvard and beyond. When a prominent blog accused Gino of manipulating data, the narrative took a dramatic turn, placing her in the eye of a storm that would question the integrity of her work and the ethical backbone of behavioral science itself. As Harvard scrutinized her studies, the world watched, waiting to see if a career marked by accolades would withstand the scrutiny or crumble under the weight of controversy. What happens when a respected researcher is accused of becoming the very subject she studies? A decision-maker at a moral crossroads. This isn't just the unraveling of a singular academic career. It's a window into the pressures that can push the pursuit of knowledge to its breaking point. Welcome to the unfolding story of Francesca Gino, a tale of ambition, controversy, and the complex pursuit of scientific truth. Francesca Gino's early tenure at Harvard Business School was nothing short of meteoric. With a knack for dissecting the nuances of human decision-making, she became a beacon of insight in the fields of negotiation, decision-making, and ethics. Her research was not just prolific, it was revolutionary, pushing the boundaries of understanding in organizational behavior. At the core of Gino's work was an exploration of how individuals can harness their unique traits, like rebelliousness, to foster innovative thinking and drive success in the workplace. Her best-selling book, Rebel Talent, is a testament to this research, arguing that the most successful among us are those who challenge the status quo and break the rules in constructive ways. Her academic papers, over 135 in total, traversed a wide array of topics from the effects of anxiety on decision-making to the influence of social norms on dishonesty. One of her most cited works investigated how people can become anchored to initial offers in negotiation settings, affecting their final outcomes. Another significant contribution was her study on the contagion of emotions in the workplace, outlining how one person's anxiety or excitement can ripple through a team, influencing performance and decisions at multiple levels. Gino's work attracted attention beyond academia. She became a sought-after consultant for organizations looking to understand and harness the psychological tendencies of their employees. Her expertise was called upon by firms across the globe, aiming to cultivate environments where innovation wasn't just encouraged, but was a natural byproduct of the company culture. In her research, Gino often collaborated with other leading minds, such as Dan Ariely and Michael Norton, to explore uncharted territories of behavioral science. Their combined work challenged long-held beliefs about honesty and integrity, unveiling the subtle psychological triggers that can sway our moral compass. As Gino's reputation soared, so did her influence. She began appearing in popular media, her studies featured in outlets like The Economist, The New York Times, and The Wall Street Journal. She was not just a scientist, she was becoming a thought leader, shaping the conversation on human behavior in business and beyond. Her insights on workplace dynamics and the human elements of business decision-making earned her numerous teaching awards at Harvard, reinforcing her impact on the next generation of business leaders. MBA students lauded her ability to bring complex psychological concepts to life, applying them to real-world business challenges. However, Gino's work wasn't just about individual behavior. She also delved into the dynamics of team decision-making and leadership. Her research shed light on how leaders could inspire creativity and how teams could leverage diverse perspectives to solve complex problems. This work included examining the role of minority dissent in group settings, showing that when a single person is willing to voice a different viewpoint, it can lead to better team outcomes. As Gino's star continued to rise, her insights began to influence policy within and outside the educational sphere. Institutions and companies sought her expertise on creating ethical guidelines and fostering environments where honesty and creativity flourished. Yet, as the accolades piled up, few could predict the turmoil that lay ahead. Gino's research, once celebrated for its ingenuity, would soon be scrutinized under a microscope, with her career hanging in the balance. But at this point in her journey, Gino stood at the pinnacle of her profession, an exemplar of Harvard's commitment to academic excellence and a pillar of the behavioral science community. The first cracks in Francesca Gino's immaculate facade began to show when a blog called Data Colada, authored by prominent figures in the world of data and behavioral science, accused her of a serious breach of ethics, fabricating data in her research. This accusation was not just a single mark against her, but suggested a potential pattern of misconduct that could undermine years of her work. Gino's studies on honesty and creativity had made her a household name in academic circles, but now they were being called into question. The very research that posited signing an honesty pledge could reduce dishonesty was under scrutiny for its integrity. The irony was not lost on the academic community, which watched with bated breath as Harvard Business School launched an internal investigation into the allegations. The committee, comprised of current and former faculty members, was tasked with a meticulous review of Gino's work. They combed through her published papers, especially focusing on those that the Data Colada blog had highlighted. The stakes were high, and the atmosphere at Harvard was tense. The outcome of this investigation would have far-reaching implications, not just for Gino, but for the credibility of the institution and behavioral science as a discipline. The committee's approach was systematic and thorough. They began by examining Gino's papers on a granular level, looking for inconsistencies within the datasets. They called upon statistical experts to evaluate the likelihood of the results obtained in her studies. Was there statistical significance where there should have been none? Were the anomalies in the data just rare occurrences, or were they evidence of something more deliberate? As the investigation deepened, the committee reached out to collaborators, research assistants, and students who had worked with Gino. They sought to understand the processes behind her research methodology. Did Gino's assistants have access to raw data? Were there any red flags noted by her co-authors? The committee's interviews were thorough, sometimes stretching for hours, as they pieced together the narrative of each study under examination. One particular study, which had influenced company policies and been integrated into marketing strategies, was found to have serious discrepancies. The statistical anomalies were too great to be ignored, and the patterns too consistent to be random. This wasn't just a matter of a few outliers. It was indicative of a broader issue that could cast doubt on the entirety of the research's findings. As the walls closed in, Gino's response to the allegations was swift and assertive. She maintained her innocence, refuting the claims of data fabrication. She posited that the investigative process was flawed, pointing to the lack of examination of raw datasets and what she perceived as a selective interviewing process that failed to include a wide array of research assistants she had worked with over the years. The tension between Gino and the committee reached a crescendo when, in an unprecedented move, Harvard began the process of stripping her of her tenure. This decision was not made lightly. Tenure at Harvard was a sacred covenant, a promise of academic freedom and job security granted only to those whose work could withstand the most rigorous scrutiny. To strip a professor of tenure was to publicly declare a loss of faith in their work, and by extension, their character. While Gino fought to clear her name, the academic community began to polarize. Some faculty members stood by her, questioning the fairness and the motives behind the investigation. Others saw the investigation as a necessary step to preserve academic integrity. In classrooms and coffee shops, in hushed tones and heated debates, the question was asked, could a researcher of Gino's standing really have fabricated data, or was she the victim of a flawed process and a rush to judgment? Meanwhile, the academic world at large began to feel the ripples of the scandal. Conferences that had once celebrated Gino's findings now held panels discussing the implications of her case. Research that had built upon her work was scrutinized, and students who had learned from her faced the unsettling possibility that their education might have been based on false premises. As the investigation neared its conclusion, with Gino's career and reputation hanging in the balance, the academic community braced itself for the fallout. Whether Gino was found guilty or exonerated, the case would leave an indelible mark on Harvard Business School and the field of behavioral science. The integrity of academic research was on trial, and the verdict would be heard around the world. The echoes of the allegations against Francesca Gino reverberated through the corridors of Harvard Business School, with the force of a gavel coming down hard in a courtroom. The charges were as severe as academic crimes come, fabricating data across multiple studies. These weren't just footnotes in her storied career. They were headline-making studies that had been cited by her peers and implemented in policy-making. The blog Data Colada, run by a triad of academic vigilantes, had laid out their case with the precision of prosecutors. They argued that statistical anomalies in Gino's research were not just improbabilities, but impossibilities. The intellectual community was left to wrestle with a troubling question. How could research that had passed peer review and been published in prestigious journals contain fabricated data? Harvard's three-person committee had an enormous task ahead. To sift through over a decade of Gino's research would take exhaustive effort. The committee began with the 4 studies highlighted by Data Colada, but the scrutiny quickly expanded. They revisited the peer review process of each paper, the statistical methods employed, and the raw data that underpinned Gino's conclusions. One particular study under scrutiny investigated the impact of moral reminders on dishonest behavior. It had been widely publicized, not just in academic journals but in the popular press. Now, it stood accused of being built on a foundation of manipulated data. The committee dissected the study, reanalyzing the data sets and attempting to replicate the results. Discrepancies that were initially dismissed as minor irregularities now loomed large, calling into question the validity of the findings. The committee's investigation was not a silent process. Within the academic community, debates raged over the integrity of the research process. Some pointed to the pressure to publish as a driving force behind potential misconduct. Others speculated about the ease with which one could manipulate data in soft sciences like behavioral research. As the investigation continued, journals that had published Gino's work faced their own quandary. To uphold the integrity of scientific publication, they initiated audits of her papers. These weren't just surface-level reviews. Each experiment was dissected, each number crunched again, and each conclusion drawn into question. Editors and reviewers who had once championed Gino's innovative approach now scrutinized her every word with a skeptic's eye. At the same time, the committee interviewed research assistants and collaborators who had worked with Gino throughout her career. These interviews painted a picture of Gino as a rigorous researcher, attentive to detail, and passionate about her work. Yet, the data anomalies remained unexplained, casting a long shadow over these personal testimonies. The committee also grappled with the implications of their findings. Proving data fabrication was a charge that could tarnish not just Gino's reputation, but also the credibility of Harvard itself. They had to be certain beyond a reasonable doubt before they could take action. This was academic due process in its most rigorous form, and the committee members felt the weight of their responsibility. As the investigation unfolded, the academic community began to feel the ripple effects. Gino's papers, which had once been staples in business school curricula, were now handled like radioactive isotopes. Co-authors scrambled to review their collaborations with them, and students who had built their theses on her findings questioned the foundations of their academic careers. The investigation also prompted a broader introspection within the academic world about the systems that allowed for such potential breaches of integrity. Was the peer review process as robust as it was believed to be? Were there checks and balances in place to prevent data manipulation? The Gino case became a catalyst for a larger discussion about reforming the process of academic publication and research verification. As months passed, the academic community waited with bated breath for the committee's final report. Gino's fate, and that of the many who had built upon her work, hung in the balance. The case of Francesca Gino was no longer just about one professor's alleged transgressions. It had become a symbol of the struggle for integrity in a system where the pressure to succeed was immense, and the temptation to cut corners was always present. The committee's findings would not just determine the course of Gino's career. They would send a message to the world about what Harvard stood for. The decision, when it came, would resonate through lecture halls, boardrooms, and beyond. It would affirm the relentless pursuit of truth that is the hallmark of science, or expose the vulnerabilities of a system struggling to police itself. The fallout from the allegations against Francesca Gino was swift and severe. Once the Harvard committee's investigation drew to a close, the findings were disseminated, not just within the storied walls of the university, but across the global academic community. The repercussions were immediate. Gino, a name once synonymous with innovative and influential research, became a case study in potential academic malfeasance. Gino's once bright career trajectory had been irrevocably altered. Placed on unpaid administrative leave and banned from campus, the tangible effects of the investigation were clear. The allegations had stripped her of the daily academic life she had known. Her lectures, once crowded with eager minds, were now a thing of the past. The labs and corridors where she had walked were now beyond reach. The professional implications extended to her publications as well. Journals that had proudly featured her work now faced the delicate task of auditing those papers. Some editors, in an act of precaution, ceased printing papers that had been accepted for publication if Gino's name graced the author list. Others went as far as to retract papers outright, an academic scarlet letter that was both public and permanent. Collaborators who had once vied for a chance to work with Gino now distanced themselves. Co-authors, fearing the potential taint of association, contemplated removing her from papers in progress. The collaborative network that Gino had spent years building began to disintegrate under the weight of suspicion and the fear of collateral damage. For students and young researchers, the impact was equally profound. Doctoral candidates and postdocs who had aligned their research with Gino's found themselves in limbo. Projects that had promised to launch careers were now fraught with uncertainty. The currency of Gino's mentorship, once invaluable, was now under question, leaving her mentees navigating a suddenly murky academic future. Beyond individual careers and studies, Gino's case spurred a broader institutional reckoning. Harvard Business School faced scrutiny over its handling of the investigation. Questions arose about the balance between due process and the protection of the school's reputation. The school's actions, including the decision to strip Gino of tenure, were debated in faculty meetings and dissected in academic journals. The reverberations of the scandal reached beyond the ivied walls of Harvard. Academic conferences that had once featured Gino as a keynote speaker now included sessions on research integrity and ethics, using her case as a springboard for larger discussions. The implications for behavioral science were significant. If the allegations were true, it meant that foundational studies within the field might have been based on fabricated data, calling into question a swath of literature that had influenced everything from corporate strategies to public policy. The personal toll on Gino was palpable. Colleagues reported a marked change in her demeanor. Once known for her vibrant presence and sharp wit, she became more reserved, her interactions tinged with the strain of the ongoing controversy. Friends and colleagues who had reached out to offer support spoke of her sense of isolation, a stark contrast to the collaborative and collegial atmosphere she had thrived in for years. As the academic year progressed, the absence of Gino's contributions was felt. Research seminars that would have featured her latest work were canceled. Discussions that she would have led were now led by others. The school, once proud to count her among its star faculty, now grappled with the complexities of her legacy. Gino's case was a stark reminder of the fragility of academic reputation. It underscored the precariousness of a system where the pressure to publish groundbreaking research can be overwhelming. For Gino, the unfolding events were more than a professional crisis. They were a profound personal challenge, one that would test her resilience and redefine her place in the academic world. In a defiant counter to Harvard's punitive measures, Francesca Gino launched a legal offensive, the reverberations of which were felt across the higher echelons of academia. Her $25 million lawsuit against Harvard, Dean Dater, and the authors of the Data Colada blog was not just a fight to reclaim her tarnished reputation, but a battle against what she perceived to be a grave miscarriage of justice. The lawsuit alleged defamation, breach of contract, and gender discrimination, painting a picture of a scholarly giant wronged by a flawed investigation process. Gino's legal team pointed to what they saw as critical oversights in the committee's work. They noted the committee's failure to interview a significant number of over 300 research assistants Gino had worked with, a move that her camp argued could have provided exonerating evidence. The legal documents highlighted the committee's reliance on a forensics firm for data analysis, which, according to Gino's claim, did not consult her on the relevance of the files they used as a basis for their analysis. Gino contended that if given the chance, she could have clarified the discrepancies that the firm interpreted as evidence of data fabrication. The lawsuit was also a strategic move, allowing Gino to present her version of events publicly. She set out to dismantle the allegations piece by piece, arguing that the committee had focused solely on 4 studies, and had not undertaken a comprehensive review of her extensive body of work. Gino's argument was that her findings had always been grounded in rigorous research, and that her reputation had been unfairly maligned. The case drew the attention of legal scholars and ethicists who debated the implications of such a lawsuit in academia. It was rare for a professor to sue their institution and colleagues so publicly, and the move was seen by some as a bold challenge to the traditional processes that governed academic investigations. The legal proceedings were not just taking place in courtrooms and through filings. Gino took her defense to the public, launching a website and penning open letters to articulate her innocence. She engaged with the media, gave interviews, and sought to control the narrative surrounding her case. Her efforts were aimed at not just clearing her name, but also at shining a light on what she saw as systemic flaws in how academic misconduct allegations were handled. The lawsuit had a chilling effect on the academic community. It raised questions about the potential consequences of reporting suspected misconduct. If a prominent professor could sue over allegations of data fabrication, would this deter others from coming forward in the future? As the legal battle unfolded, Gino's absence in the academic world became more pronounced. Projects she had initiated stalled, and her research, once a staple in business courses, was now subjected to a shadow of doubt. Her students and mentees, who had seen her as a guiding force, now had to navigate their academic journeys without her mentorship. The lawsuit also prompted discussions about the role of gender in academic investigations. Gino's claim of gender discrimination suggested that she believed her treatment was partly due to her being a woman in a predominantly male field. This allegation added another layer to the case, bringing to the forefront conversations about gender dynamics within the academic sphere. As the legal wrangling continued, the broader community watched on with mixed feelings. Some saw Gino as a victim of a flawed investigation, while others saw the lawsuit as an attempt to deflect from serious allegations. The lawsuit was not just Gino's fight alone. It was a litmus test for academic integrity and the lengths to which an institution and an individual would go to protect their standing in the scholarly community. While the courts had yet to render a verdict, the court of public opinion was in session, with everyone from tenured professors to first-year students weighing in on the case's merits. Gino's name, once associated with pioneering research, was now entangled in a legal and ethical quagmire that would leave an indelible mark on her legacy and the annals of Harvard Business School. The case of Francesca Gino was a catalyst for a larger discussion on the very fabric of academic research and integrity. The allegations against her had exposed a potentially dark underbelly of academic pressure, where the push for publishable results could possibly lead to the corruption of data and research findings. This wasn't just about Gino's work anymore. It was about the system that had allowed her alleged misconduct to go unchecked for so long. In the wake of the scandal, other institutions began to introspect, re-evaluating their internal controls and the robustness of their review processes. The Gino case had brought to light the possible vulnerabilities within peer review systems, and academic journals started to implement more stringent measures to verify the authenticity of submitted research. Data repositories became more common, where raw datasets could be scrutinized before studies were published. The integrity of scientific publication, once taken for granted, was now a subject of intense scrutiny and reform. Simultaneously, the episode ignited a debate about the culture of publish or perish that dominates many research institutions. Critics of the system argued that when careers are made or broken on the back of publication records, the temptation to manipulate findings grows. This, in turn, could lead to a toxic environment where the quality of research is compromised for the sake of quantity. The Gino controversy became a touchstone in calls for a shift in academic values, from the number of publications to the impact and quality of research. Moreover, the Gino case highlighted the need for better mentorship and oversight in the training of young researchers. Graduate programs across the country began reassessing their curricula to place a greater emphasis on ethics and the responsible conduct of research. Workshops on data integrity and ethical publication practices became a staple in doctoral programs, aiming to instill in the next generation of academics a stronger moral compass. In the legal arena, Gino's lawsuit provoked discussions about the rights of accused academics. Legal experts pondered the balance between protecting the reputation of individuals and ensuring that the academic community could police itself effectively. The lawsuit raised questions about due process in academic investigations and the rights of researchers to defend their work and reputation. The Gino case also affected the commercial sector. Companies that had relied on her research for their business strategies or leadership training programs now faced a conundrum. They had to decide whether to continue utilizing her findings or distance themselves from her work. This had a ripple effect on the consulting industry, where evidence-based practices were the gold standard. For behavioral science as a field, the Gino case was a turning point. It prompted a period of self-examination, pushing researchers to be more rigorous in their methodologies and more transparent in their data reporting. Collaborative research, once seen as a strength of the field, was now scrutinized for potential weaknesses in accountability. The implications for Gino's students were particularly profound. For those whose research was directly tied to her work, the scandal meant re-evaluating their theses and, in some cases, starting from scratch. It was a harsh lesson in the impermanence of academic authority and the importance of independent verification in research. As the legal battle waged on, the global academic community continued to grapple with the implications of Gino's case. It became a reference point in discussions about research misconduct, a reminder of the fragility of academic credibility, and an example of the potential consequences of a flawed system. The controversy surrounding Francesca Gino had evolved into a mirror reflecting the broader challenges faced by the academic world in maintaining the integrity of its scholarship. Francesca Gino's staunchest allies mounted a robust defense in the wake of her downfall. Amidst the clamor of voices calling for accountability and transparency, a dedicated contingent stood firm in their support for Gino, questioning the validity of the investigation and the motivations behind it. Their defense was multifaceted, focusing on Gino's character, her past work, and the broader context of her contributions to the field of behavioral science. Colleagues who had known Gino for years came forward to attest to her integrity and dedication to the scientific method. They pointed to her meticulous approach to research, her attention to detail, and her commitment to rigorous analysis. In their view, the Gino they knew was incapable of the dishonesty of which she was accused. They cited her mentorship, recalling how she had fostered a generation of critical thinkers and ethical researchers. These supporters were not blind to the gravity of the accusations, but felt that the process by which they were investigated was flawed. They argued that the investigation had been rushed, driven by the pressure of public opinion, rather than the slow, methodical process that such serious allegations warranted. Some went so far as to suggest that Gino had been singled out, a victim of a system that was too eager to find a scapegoat for the broader issues plaguing academic research. At the same time, students and junior researchers who had been inspired by Gino's lectures and seminars spoke out about the positive impact she had on their careers. They remembered her dynamic teaching style, her ability to translate complex concepts into relatable lessons, and her encouragement of critical thinking and skepticism, a trait they found ironic given the current situation. Outside of Harvard, the academic community at large was divided. Some saw Gino's case as a clear-cut example of research misconduct that deserved punishment. Others viewed it through a more sympathetic lens, considering the immense pressures of academic life and the cutthroat competition for funding, recognition, and tenured positions. They questioned whether these pressures could push even the most ethical scientists to a breaking point. The case also sparked conversations about the role of gender in academia. Gino's defenders highlighted the gender discrimination claim in her lawsuit, drawing attention to the struggles faced by women in science. They pointed out that women are often underrepresented in the highest echelons of academia, and may face different expectations and scrutiny. Some of Gino's supporters postulated that gender biases had played a role in the investigation's outcome. In the legal sphere, Gino's defense team worked tirelessly to deconstruct the allegations against her. They scrutinized the investigative committee's procedures, looking for breaches in protocol and potential conflicts of interest. They highlighted every instance where they felt Gino had not been given a fair opportunity to respond to the accusations, emphasizing the lack of transparency in the process. The defense also centered on the forensics firm, hired by the committee to analyze Gino's data. Her legal team questioned the firm's methods, qualifications, and the conclusions they drew. They argued that the firm had not been given proper context for the data they analyzed, which led to misinterpretation and erroneous conclusions about Gino's research practices. As the lawsuit progressed, more details emerged about the specific studies in question. Gino's defense emphasized the complexity of behavioral research, where outcomes can be influenced by a myriad of factors and where data can be interpreted in various ways. They pointed to the subjective nature of statistical analysis, suggesting that what the committee saw as anomalies could be explained by alternative analytical approaches. Throughout this period, Gino remained professionally active to the extent possible, engaging with the academic community through online platforms, and continuing her advocacy for rigorous and ethical research practices. She participated in webinars and virtual conferences, discussing not her case directly, but the importance of maintaining integrity in the face of adversity. The defense campaign built by Gino and her supporters was not just a battle for her professional life, it was a struggle for her personal identity. They were fighting against the narrative that had been constructed around her, attempting to recast her not as a perpetrator of academic fraud, but as a respected scientist caught in a flawed system. As the lawsuit wound its way through the legal system, the academic community watched closely. The outcome of Gino's case would have far-reaching implications for how allegations of misconduct are handled in the future, and for the lives and careers of those involved in her research. It was a sobering reminder of the fragility of reputation, and the thin line that separates esteemed scholarship from disrepute. In the academic ecosystem where Francesca Gino had once thrived, the void left by her absence was profound and deeply felt. Projects that were in full swing before the controversy now faced an uncertain future. For those who had been working closely with Gino, the dilemma was whether to proceed with the research that bore her influence, or to abandon ship in the wake of the scandal. Collaborators who had ongoing projects with Gino faced a particularly difficult predicament. Some chose to suspend their work, waiting for the dust to settle. Others, more defiant, pressed on, determined not to let the controversy derail their scientific pursuits. They believed in the value of the research, regardless of the allegations against one of their own. The research assistants and junior faculty members, who had once seen Gino as a beacon of inspiration, now grappled with a tarnished legacy. For them, the unfolding events were a crash course in the complexities of academic integrity and the consequences of alleged misconduct. They watched as their mentor fought to clear her name, learning firsthand the harsh realities of a career in academia that no classroom could teach. The impact of the case extended beyond Harvard's storied campus to the broader field of behavioral science. Researchers who had built upon Gino's theories were forced to re-evaluate their work in light of the controversy. Could they continue to cite studies that might be based on fabricated data? The intellectual community began to scrutinize their own methodologies, ensuring their research could withstand the kind of scrutiny Gino's work was now under. Meanwhile, at Harvard, Gino's courses were reassigned to other faculty members, some of whom had been her peers and collaborators. These professors had to navigate the sensitive task of addressing the elephant in the room: how to discuss the theories and contributions of a colleague under investigation for academic misconduct. They did so with a mix of professional detachment and a nuanced understanding of the situation's complexity. For students, Gino's absence was more than a logistical inconvenience. It was a disruption to their educational journey. Those who had been drawn to Harvard by the prospect of studying under Gino now found themselves at a crossroads. Some sought new mentors, while others became more skeptical of the academic system as a whole. This skepticism was not limited to Gino's students. It permeated the student body, fostering debates about the pressures of academic life and the ethics of research. The Harvard administration, too, was under scrutiny. The decision to place Gino on administrative leave and the subsequent lawsuit raised questions about the university's handling of misconduct allegations. Was the administration acting in the best interest of the institution's integrity, or were they simply reacting to protect its reputation? These questions were discussed in hushed tones among faculty and in the impassioned debates of student forums. Gino's case became a topic of study in itself, dissected in ethics classes and debated in law schools. It provided a real-life case study of the legal challenges and ethical dilemmas that can arise in the world of academia. Students analyzed the legal documents, pieced together the timeline of events, and debated the merits of Gino's lawsuit against Harvard. Amidst the turmoil, Harvard Business School had to confront the ramifications of the controversy on its own reputation. The institution was forced to take a hard look at its policies and procedures regarding academic misconduct. The Gino case prompted discussions about possible reforms to the tenure system and the support structures available to faculty members accused of misconduct. The ripple effects of Gino's case were felt throughout the world of higher education. Universities across the globe began to tighten their research oversight mechanisms, implementing more rigorous checks to prevent similar incidents. They revisited their codes of conduct, emphasizing the ethical responsibilities of researchers and reinforcing the paramount importance of integrity in all scholarly work. The academic community was left to ponder the lessons learned from Gino's case. It served as a stark reminder that in the pursuit of knowledge, the line between right and wrong can become blurred by ambition and the pressure to achieve. For those who had worked with Gino, the controversy was a watershed moment, a painful but perhaps necessary juncture that would shape their approach to research and academia for years to come. As the reverberations of Francesca Gino's professional upheaval continued to resound, the wider implications for the field of academia were impossible to ignore. The scrutiny of Gino's work had opened a Pandora's box of sorts, unleashing a series of questions about the efficacy of current academic practices and the future of research integrity. Within Harvard Business School, the curriculum that had once featured Gino's research now underwent revision. Course material was carefully audited for any references to her potentially compromised work. Faculty members tasked with this overhaul faced the dual challenge of maintaining the quality of education while ensuring that no shadow of doubt hung over the content they delivered to students. The controversy stirred a renewed interest in the ethics of behavioral research. Academic institutions worldwide revisited their coursework on research methodology, emphasizing the importance of data transparency and replicability. Ethical research became more than a set of guidelines. It became a cornerstone of scientific inquiry, discussed fervently in seminars and symposiums. In the legal space, Gino's lawsuit brought to the fore the nuanced relationship between academia and the law. Legal scholars examined the precedents set by the case, debating the protections afforded to academics under the umbrella of intellectual freedom, and the extent to which universities could police their own. Law students pored over the case details, using them as a framework for understanding the complexities of libel, defamation, and contractual obligations in an academic setting. The implications of Gino's case also stretched into the domain of publishing. Academic journals, which had previously heralded peer review as the gold standard for research validation, now faced skepticism about the robustness of their processes. Publishers began to implement more rigorous review procedures, and some even introduced post-publication peer review as a mechanism to catch any issues that may have slipped through initial screenings. For those who had built upon Gino's research, the scandal prompted a wave of self-scrutiny. Researchers meticulously re-examined their data and conclusions, seeking to ensure that their findings were not built on a questionable foundation. The academic community at large became more vigilant, with a heightened awareness of the need for diligence in data analysis and reporting. In the public sphere, Gino's case had sparked a conversation about the relationship between academia and society. Trust in scientific research was at stake. The public, which often looked to universities as bastions of knowledge and truth, now questioned the reliability of academic findings. Scholars took to public forums, op-eds, and social media to address these concerns, striving to restore confidence in their work and in the scientific process. As Gino's lawsuit continued to make its way through the courts, it highlighted the potential for legal actions to influence academic governance. Universities examined their own legal frameworks, considering how to protect their interests while upholding the principles of academic freedom and due process. The case underscored the need for clear policies that could support both the institution's reputation and the rights of individual academics. The ripple effects of the controversy also touched upon the commercialization of academic research. Companies that had utilized Gino's findings in their business practices now faced a dilemma. They had to decide whether to sever ties with the now controversial research or to stand by the applications that had proven successful in their operations. This led to broader discussions within the business community about the due diligence required when applying academic research in practice. As the academic year drew to a close, the Gino case remained a topic of intense interest and debate. The controversy had morphed into a catalyst for change across numerous facets of academia, prompting introspection, debate, and ultimately, reform. It had become clear that the implications of Gino's case would continue to influence the academic landscape for years to come, shaping policies, practices, and the very ethos of scholarly pursuit. Amidst the tumult of allegations and the personal and professional battles that ensued, the broader impact of Francesca Gino's work persisted in the realm of behavioral science. Her research, which had often stood at the intersection of psychology and business, had influenced a generation of thought on what motivates people within organizations. In dissecting Gino's contributions, one must look beyond the controversy to the body of work that had, for years, passed the rigorous scrutiny of peer review and had been implemented in practical settings. Her research had often focused on the positive aspects of non-conformity in the workplace, suggesting that when employees break from tradition in constructive ways, innovation and productivity can flourish. Gino's insights into the dynamics of decision-making had also been significant. Her exploration of how emotions such as happiness and sadness could affect judgment provided a nuanced understanding of human behavior in complex organizational settings. These findings had not only furthered academic discussion, but had also been integrated into leadership training programs worldwide. Even as the validity of some of her studies was called into question, the impact of Gino's work remained evident in the continued citation of her uncontested research. The discussions she had started about workplace dynamics, the psychology of decision-making, and the influence of social norms on behavior continued to resonate in academic circles and industry discussions. The case also sparked a re-evaluation of her work, with some researchers undertaking the task of replicating her studies. This pursuit, born out of the necessity to validate her contributions, led to new findings and in some cases confirmed the original insights that Gino had put forward. This replication process underscored the self-correcting nature of scientific inquiry and the importance of validation in strengthening the body of knowledge in any field. Beyond her research, Gino's legacy as an educator remained intact in the hearts and minds of many of her former students. These individuals, who had gone on to their careers, remembered Gino's teachings, emphasizing ethical decision-making and the courage to challenge the status quo. Her pedagogical impact was evident in the way these students approached their work, instilled with the values of critical thinking and moral responsibility. The controversy also brought into focus the significant contributions Gino had made to the field of negotiation and ethics. Her work on how people can be anchored to initial offers and the implications of this for negotiating outcomes continued to be relevant. These contributions were part of a larger body of work that remained valuable to the fields of behavioral economics and psychology. As for Gino's standing in the field, many colleagues and institutions continued to recognize her past contributions. While some distanced themselves from her amid the allegations, others maintained their respect for the body of work that had not been implicated in the investigation. They argued for the distinction between the researcher's alleged actions and the valuable insights her work had provided over the years. In the wake of the controversy, the academic community grappled with complex questions about the legacy of a scholar like Gino. How should the field reconcile the contributions of a researcher accused of misconduct? Could the valuable insights from her uncontested work be separated from the shadow cast by the allegations? As these debates unfolded, Gino's case served as a reminder of the enduring nature of scholarly work. Even as her reputation suffered under the weight of the investigation, the principles and ideas she had introduced continued to live on in the work of others. Her influence on the study of behavior within organizations, on the understanding of motivation and creativity, and on the ethics of decision-making would persist, a testament to the complexities of academic legacies and the indelible mark they leave on their fields. The Francesca Gino saga had far-reaching implications, extending into the future of behavioral science. As the academic community sought to distance itself from the scandal, it also recognized the need for introspection and evolution. The field of behavioral science at this juncture found itself at a crossroads, balancing on the precipice between past achievements and the path forward. The controversy surrounding Gino's research prompted institutions to critically evaluate their methodological approaches. Researchers began to adopt more transparent and robust practices, sharing data sets and methodologies openly to allow for greater scrutiny and replication. This shift towards transparency was not a knee-jerk reaction, but a deliberate move to restore faith in behavioral science as a discipline. In classrooms and conferences, there was a renewed emphasis on the ethics of research. Educators incorporated discussions about Gino's case into their curricula, not just as a cautionary tale, but as a starting point for broader conversations about the responsibility of scientists to their peers, their subjects, and the wider community. The case served as an impetus to reinforce the idea that scientific research must be conducted with integrity, honesty, and respect for the scientific method. The implications of Gino's case also stretched to the way future behavioral scientists were trained. Academic programs around the world revised their doctoral training regimens, instilling early in students the importance of ethical research practices. These programs sought to produce not only skilled researchers, but also principled individuals who could carry the mantle of behavioral science with integrity. Furthermore, funding bodies and grant-awarding agencies began to place a greater emphasis on the reproducibility of research. They allocated funds for replication studies, recognizing the importance of confirming results before they could be translated into policy or practice. This change marked a departure from the traditional focus on novel findings, signaling a commitment to solidifying the foundations of existing knowledge. The Gino case also had a democratizing effect on the field. As the community sought to safeguard against similar incidents, there was a move to involve a wider range of voices in research review processes, including those from underrepresented groups and varying schools of thought. This inclusivity enriched the field, bringing in fresh perspectives and challenging established paradigms. For those in leadership positions within academia, Gino's case underscored the importance of mentorship and guidance. Senior researchers took more active roles in overseeing the work of their juniors, providing not just supervision but also moral guidance. They recognized that fostering a culture of accountability was critical to preventing misconduct. In the aftermath of the scandal, the behavioral science community also began to engage more actively with the public. Scientists sought to communicate their findings more effectively, to make their work accessible, and to demonstrate its relevance to everyday life. They aimed to build a bridge of trust with the public, which had been shaken by the allegations against one of their own. The Gino case served as a catalyst for a renaissance in behavioral science, one marked by greater rigor, openness, and a deeper commitment to ethical standards. It prompted a re-evaluation of what it means to be a scientist in the field of human behavior. Researchers embraced their roles as stewards of knowledge, cognizant of the fact that their work had the power to shape not only academic discourse, but also the fabric of society. As behavioral science moved forward, it did so with a greater sense of purpose and a clearer understanding of the ethical landscape. The field became more resilient, adaptive, and reflective, with Francesca Gino's case serving as a turning point in its history. It was a reminder that the pursuit of knowledge is a responsibility that carries with it the need for constant vigilance, both of oneself and of the scientific community at large.